January 17th, 2024, and the time is 6:35 p.m. Our mission is to provide a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Zach, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and then can you please call roll?
Following board members are present at the District Administration Office. Scott Andresen.
Here.
Natalie Copeland.
Here.
Al Dahlgren.
Here.
Zach Dorholtz here. Shannon Haas.
Here.
Monica Segura-Schwartz. Heather Weems.
Here.
And the following cabinet members and staff are present at the District Administration Office. Superintendent Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Superintendent of PK5 Education Nikki Hansen, Assistant Superintendent of E12 Education Services Dr. Mike Rivard, Executive Director of Community Education Adam Holm, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services Amy Scalrud, Executive Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations Tracy Flynn-Bowe, Executive Director of Operations Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Research, Enrollment, and Assessments Don Roper, Media Technicians Paul Novak and Gordy Scott, and Custodian on site is Evan Voss.
Thank you. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's Board of Education meeting agenda.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott, a second by Natalie. Zach, can you call vote again?
Heather Weems,
Yes.
Monica Segura-Schwartz, Shannon Haas,
Yes.
Zach Dorholtz, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Natalie Copeland.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board adopts routinely without debate. Any single member may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, approval of minutes from December 6, 2023 and December 20, 2023. Item B, approval of bills and other financial transactions in the grand total amount of $2,114,576.55. Item C, approval of personnel staff changes. Item D, acceptance of grant awards and donations. Item E, quarterly expenditures for board members. Item F, bid awards, Apollo LTFM improvements. Item G, call for bids, Apollo A-Wing roof replacement. And item H, call bids for Apollo LTFM improvements, rebid. At this time, does any board member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott, a second by Natalie. Zach, can you call vote?
Natalie Copeland.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Zach Dorholtz, yes. Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Monica Segura-Schwartz. Heather Weems.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
All right, thank you. We have one information item tonight. We have the Oak Hill School presentation, and welcome Principal Deb Jokula. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair House, Superintendent Putnam, and board members. My name is Deb Jokula, and I am in my third year as lead principal at Oak Hill Community School. Oh, my apologies. Is that better? Okay. Do you want me to start over? Just go from where I left off? Okay, so 3 years at Oak Hill as lead principal, and it's my 6th year there overall, as I was the assistant principal previous to becoming lead principal. It is my honor to speak to you this evening about our wonderful Oak Hill learning community. A positive culture and climate are foundational to the success of our school. We established this through our focus on building relationships during the first 6 weeks of school. As we build our classroom communities, we are also consistently utilizing conscious discipline strategies during our morning meeting with a focus on teaching calming strategies, wishing well when students are absent, and greetings as a connection as part of the Brain Smart Start. Oak Hill has been a PBIS exemplar school since 2012. We have maintained this status due to the fact that we are very proactive by teaching expectations across all settings: playground, hallways, cafeteria, bus, and these are all retaught throughout the year. We utilize our student support room proactively by ensuring that students who do struggle have an added connection. Whoops. Lost my place there. Hang on one second. With a trained behavior resource specialist. These supports for students and teachers have a positive impact on our climate and culture while truly helping our students to self-regulate through calming strategies and connections with adults. These are life skills that are critical for student success now and in the future. At Oak Hill, we moved away from student council a number of years ago, changing to a model in which student leaders were selected as Oak Hill ambassadors. Our ambassadors lead our PBIS assemblies by standing in front, leading the unique song that is pictured on the bottom right. They also write and perform skits modeling positive behavior. They team with some of our kindergarten classrooms to help students on projects as well. The Student Voice Project was implemented last year by myself and our school counselor, Kim Brown. We decided to do this work based on the feedback we received from a survey sent out by Donna Roper in the assessment department, which indicated that our students were noticing that peers were not being kind to one another. Donna and I worked together to repeat some of the survey questions the following fall, which again reflected students were continuing to identify a lack of kindness as a concern with up to 20% of our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. We established representatives from each 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classroom selected by their peers to work with Kim and I to talk about their school experiences. We discovered that many of our students were reporting that while they were well connected and supported by the adults at Oak Hill, they were really struggling to resolve peer conflicts. This feedback was then used to guide the work of our school counselors for classroom instruction and PBIS. It also resulted in a focus on kindness that has become our Imagine 742 theme for this school year. At Oak Hill, all we do is focused on instruction that produces positive outcomes. With PBIS and social emotional learning through implementation of conscious discipline practices, we build learning communities because this is the best way for students to learn and grow. We strive daily to ensure that students remain in their classrooms so they have access to grade level standards. Our instructional focus is also on increasing student voice in the learning environment. We utilize partner work through structures like Turn and Talk to process new content, or Think, Pair, Share to get students actively engaging in a structured manner to visit with a peer about their learning. We focus on problem solving. This discourse and student voice is embedded in our new iReady math curriculum. We are thoughtful about pairing language objectives with content objectives to do all that we can to mitigate the barrier of learning English as a second language. Pairing language and content objectives also support learners who may be on an individual education plan or 504 through thoughtful introduction and teaching around new vocabulary or other content that is unfamiliar. The more we can make learning real for our students through visuals like video, pictures, or manipulatives like base 10 blocks in math, the more relevant and engaging the content will be. Students must be in their classrooms to benefit from those grade level content standards. We embrace all cultures as we work with our community to produce positive outcomes. We have students from all over the world and the United States at Oak Hill. It is part of what makes our school strong and unique. These pictures you see were taken this fall on Indigenous People Day, where Kip from the Equity Department coordinated with our school and a local bank, providing 50 volunteers to provide an exciting learning opportunity for our students. They were able to experience being in and around a teepee while receiving information on the Native American value for our earth. Students learned information about Native American culture with a focus on caring for the earth. As an educator with many years of experience, I have learned that while there are certain commonalities that we need to know to support student growth and achievement, such as high-quality curriculum and instruction, relationships and connections, there are also many differences. At Oak Hill, we strive to identify those unique characteristics of our learners to best support their growth and development. This involves many departments, but especially our multilingual department. We have one teacher assigned to each grade level, K-5. They work and plan with our classroom teachers to ensure that we are utilizing best practices for all our students learning English as a second language. Our exit rate for multilingual learners exceeds the state average, so we know that our work is effective. On most Wednesdays, our staff are in letters training, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, training which matches the latest in research on brain development and how we learn to read, and those instructional practices that match. In 742, we are fortunate to have curriculums that supports this new learning with Sunday Essentials for grades K through 3 students. We are always striving to identify and address any gaps in learning. We can identify those while also addressing students who are working beyond grade level by ensuring students who demonstrate mastery on those standards continue to learn and grow by receiving additional accelerated instruction through our talent development program. We further work to support our learners who demonstrate strong potential through our Young Scholars program. Young Scholars show high academic potential combined with out-of-the-box thinking and innovation. Our talent development teachers, Christina Tykwinski and Steve Tax, work with these students to develop the skills they need to grow. We are continually striving to be innovative as we meet student needs. We differentiate our instruction to meet students where they're at, so we are ensuring a year's worth of growth in a year's time or more. We utilize formal and informal methods of assessment to help navigate those pathways for learning. Our new tools include FastBridge and MyPath, so we can monitor progress and assign work to students that meets them where they're at and collects data to determine if they need more practice with a skill. As we're better able to identify the learning gaps our students are experiencing and answer those needs, the fewer students will fall behind. We are most effective when we can intervene early and with the greatest impact. Students love to learn new things, and teachers love to create new experiences for them. We were able to offer all of our Oak Hill students the opportunity to engage with our teachers to learn a day of code. In addition, our media specialist has been able to offer lessons on robotics using VEX robots. The ultimate goal in education is to produce citizens that are college and career ready. In the elementary world, that starts with working with our students to be respectful, responsible, and engaged with their teachers as they participate in the process of teaching and learning. We would like to facilitate the skills for our students to be successful lifelong learners. Our 4th and 5th grade students use daily planners to help organize their work, break it down into manageable chunks, and we also focus on attendance, task management, and organization. These are life skills our students need to be successful 21st century learners. In addition to those life skills, it's important to help students visualize their future and what possibilities exist. We have organized career days with many wonderful parent volunteers so students can see themselves in different occupations they might maybe not have considered. Here we see our fire chief talking about firefighting, a postal worker. We have also had a dentist, dental hygienist, and art professor all present on our career day. At Oak Hill, one of our greatest strengths is our community. We are very fortunate to have an active parent-teacher-student association that is actively supporting our school community. They do this through fundraising such as the Walkathon and by creating events for our families such as Bingo Night, which was held in December. They also coordinate our Last Blast. We all celebrate the end of another successful school year with games, bouncy houses, food, face painting, and the ever-popular dunk tank where students can do their best to dunk the principal, assistant principal, and staff volunteers. It has been fun and exciting to invite our community back into our school. Whether it's a music concert or a special family night, we have outstanding attendance. At our last family night, we had over 700 people. Our focus was science, technology, engineering, and math, with educational sessions featuring live animals students were able to pet, making electrical circuits, and of course, a meal of pizza and sambusa was served by teacher volunteers. Our Veterans Day program is always a favorite in November. Our entire school assembles in the gym to honor our veterans. We also distribute colorful cards with positive messages to the Veterans Center. We are super excited that this year our students in grades 2 through 5 will be going to Great Theater for a production of Percy Jackson, Lightning Thief, the musical, on February 8th. Our K-1 classes were able to attend Frog and Toad in the fall, all due to our PTSA leading the way for these community fundraising in support of these experiences. Our Student Voice Project pointed us in that direction of focusing on kindness. Students who can make good friends and sustain positive relationships are more connected at school and are happier overall. Our student ambassadors are leading the way as we strive to build and maintain friendships that may last a lifetime. Take a look at how they imagine a school where kindness is at the heart center.
At Oak Hill Elementary, I am an ambassador, a PE helper, and I've been Student of the Month. And I'm a respectful and responsible person. Kindness means showing love and compassion to everyone and anyone, no matter what. I show kindness by the littlest things, by a smile, helping a friend, and just showing someone that you care.
Kindness means to me is like respect and care for the ones you know. What I do to show kindness is to help them when they need help.
Imagine if all students showed kindness. About once a month I go into all of our classrooms as the Sandy Shuttle in the younger classrooms, and we talk about the difference between being rude, mean, bullying. We talk about conflict resolution, mindfulness, and how to manage different emotions. And this year, I really wanted to try to promote this idea of kindness and came up with the idea of kindness keepers. And so each lesson, I try to start the morning with what are some kind things people have done since the last time we talked. And the kids might tell stories about their family, helping their younger sibling with homework. They might be talking about welcoming that new student. We try to check in for a couple minutes about what are you doing? To celebrate it, encourage it, promote it, but also to give other kids ideas of what they could do. It's a lot of fun to see what kids will do to spread kindness and to show kindness with one another. But teaching kindness is really important for their success too. If students feel like they're in an environment where things are safe and where they're cared about and they're connected to people, they do better. They have a better chance at succeeding, which means their brain is primed for learning, right? It's open. That green part of the brain is working for them. They handle difficult things a lot better because they're calmer and because they feel connected. So that gives them a better chance at solving problems with classmates better, right? Dealing with stress better.
I can help people. Even if I can't change the whole world with everybody's problems, I still like to help other people with their problems because it feels like I'm changing the whole world as well.
Our student ambassadors, the students that get nominated for this are so excited for this role. Last year we did a student voices panel to get student input on what do they love about our school, what can we do to make it better. They love that opportunity to lead. Last year they went into classrooms and talked about how to be an upstander. I run into them at lunch or in the halls and they're like, did you know I'm an ambassador? You know, or you see them running off to their meeting and they're so excited to be in that role. When I see kids looking out for one another and caring about one another and just so genuinely and selflessly doing that, saying those kind things, doing those kind things, it makes me proud, it makes me feel lucky to do what I do, and it gives me hope for our future. You know, and I try to remind them that they are our leaders tomorrow and they're going to go out there and they're going to be the change makers, right? They're going to be in these different jobs. What a cool opportunity they have ahead. I try to praise that and acknowledge that wherever I can because I think that's important, right? And inspiring them. So they inspire me.
Kindness means to me being nice to people and being inclusive. It means to be accepting and help any and everyone with their feelings no matter what. No matter if they're feeling sad, mad, or frustrated. These experiences taught me to live united within my community.
Imagine that.
Thank you so much for your time and attention. And did you have any questions for me?
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Scott?
You mentioned something called pair share. What is it?
Think, pair, share. So that's a strategy where we really try to get students to engage with their peers on their learning. So they might be presented, for example, with a math problem to solve. And so they're going to think, first of all, kind of reflect on how they might approach that problem. They're going to pair with a peer, probably sitting next to them. And then they're going to have a conversation about how they would each approach that problem. Then they would share back to the whole class. And they would, it's nice because it puts children's voice in the room. And sometimes the way the teacher explains things, we hope that the students all connect with it, but sometimes it's the children's own words that help others connect with it better. And it just deepens their learning.
Okay, is Trinishare something like that too?
I couldn't hear you, what?
Trinishare, is that what you called it?
Oh, no, it's think, pair, share.
Oh,
Yep.
an acronym. Okay. The science of reading was declared by the legislature recently. Does the Sanjay program fit into that, or how does that work?
The curriculums that they have reviewed thus far are still up for review. Sunday wasn't one of the ones initially named, but I believe as we move through the process, it has the elements that would fit with the science of reading.
Okay. I saw the TP up there. That's kind of fun. What's involved in teaching that? Because that's also a statutory requirement.
Yeah, we worked with the equity department and KIP worked to really kind of outline what they wanted to teach. They taught many different things about why the teepees were used, what the indigenous folks valued in their culture, and especially caring for the earth. And then the students were provided an opportunity to work with these volunteers from a local bank, and they walked the property and they did things like picked up trash or picked weeds out of the grass as a way to beautify our area, and just a tangible way for them to show care for the earth. Yes.
Great Theater has a program that they do some play in a school for a week or something like that. They're also talking about transportation to Lightning Thief, and that apparently there's been some changes in the law requiring nurses be on the buses for outside activities. How are you working that?
Well, that's an excellent question. It is a very involved process, and Dr. Rivard, Nikki Hansen, Jason Harris, Dr. Putnam, all worked with Jess Voss to make sure that every student, first of all, that we would have knowledge of any medical needs, and that we would have nurses along to adequately care for any students who had needs.
Okay. Is the word getting out on that, that legal change? I was at the MSBA conference and talking with people that supply nurses, and they didn't even know about it. I was educating them. It's,
Well, I'm happy to say in 742, we were very knowledgeable about it, and I felt well supported through that process.
okay.
And we were so excited about the outcome.
I noticed that in 2023, there was quite a bump in enrollment. Went up and then it went back down. Do you have any idea what that was behind that?
You know, typically around April, we see a bit of an exodus, and then folks come back towards later in the year, and it just kind of happens. It depends on when it happens, whether we capture those numbers. We had a number of families leave the country, and a lot of them were large families. And so that really did create a bit of a decline, but then it's been building right back up. We're currently at about 760.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about English as a second language? I'm kind of intrigued with it, but I don't know much about it.
Oh, okay. Well, we have 6 licensed teachers who are licensed to be multilingual teachers. And so they work in collaboration with our classroom teachers. We have content objectives, which would be those math and reading objectives, and then we have language objectives, because we know that learning a new language, a lot of it is around the vocabulary and things that are brand new to them. So how can we help students who are learning English for the first time really visualize what it is that we're talking about? Today I was in a classroom and we talked about the oil rig that blew up off one of the coasts, and we realized that some of our students didn't have quite enough background knowledge on what an oil rig was. They thought maybe it was on a boat. And so one of my suggestions to this new teacher was to show some video showing how they really drill into the ocean bed and are held there, and how the waves can create tumultuous patterns that cause this accident by breaking down some of the piping.
It's kind
So
of
that's
like,
just an example.
Yeah.
And then they also do some small groups where they pull out, they work very specifically on teaching language objectives. We do a lot of, there's 4 areas. There's the speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And so they're assessed on the access test coming up soon next month. And that's an annual test to see how much their language has grown and developed through the year. And then based on that, we can cater our instruction to fit those needs.
okay, so part of it is matching up what the word actually is. Because I remember doing a little bit of Spanish and they were teaching us how to read it, but I had no clue what we were reading about. Sounds like you're working on it.
We really need to build that background knowledge so that they have context for the new language. That's how we remember new things, right? We attach new learning to what we already know. And so we really try to bridge that gap.
Thank you. Good job.
Monica and then Natalie.
Hello, thank you for being here. I like your presentation. You have a kind of a significant report to the board. So what I want to ask you is to tell me, I'd like you to tell me about a challenge that you had identified last year, and how did you decide to tackle it, and what was the result?
Well, I think, it's always a challenge with a large student body to make sure that all students are demonstrating growth. And so in our continuous improvement plan, we really want to focus on math and reading and how do we measure the growth. Because at the end of the year, it's too late to do anything different. So we really are looking at our data and matching what we think is not having the impact we hope, to not do things that are necessary, but to really focus in on strategies that really help our students to grow as learners and as academics. So, that's always the challenge in a public school and especially in elementary school. Our culture and climate, as I said earlier, is very supportive. We know that students learn best when they feel heard and seen and cared about. And so that's where we always start. And then we work really hard on those academics.
So do you have you said that you have a very transient population? You have students that are always changing?
Not real transient, no, we're pretty stable. We might have a certain percent that drop at a certain time of year, but it's not a huge number. I would not say it's transient.
So your fifth graders are children that have been in the school since kindergarten?
Most of them. I don't have a percentage, but I would say the vast majority would have come through all the way from kindergarten.
And how does that change the climate of the school? If you can tell us a little bit about how does it look like?
Well, it really helps us to build every year upon what happened the previous year. So that continuity is one of the strengths of our school.
And my last question is, can you tell me about something that made you really proud about your school last year?
The whole community, our staff. Our staff is exceptional. They work really hard. They care deeply about the students. Everyone from our nutritional services staff, our custodians, our bus drivers, our teachers, of course, are the heart of our school, and our parents in the community that we're in. They're very involved. They're very caring about making sure that Oak Hill maintains a focus on helping their students to be 21st century learners.
Thank you.
Good questions, Monica. Thank you, Deb, for your presentation. And you come across as extremely knowledgeable and a former teacher, I would imagine. Yes.
Yes.
I can hear that in your language and in your voice for sure. I just absolutely love the idea of ambassadors. One of the things we talk about a lot on the board is how are we helping students to, such as in the play in a week, to understand that they can be in front of people and they can use their voice, and it doesn't have to be, it could be scary, but they can do it anyway. And to utilize those student leaders is really special. So thanks for doing that. I mean, to lead the assemblies, whoa.
Yeah.
And write the plays. That's really beautiful. I really loved hearing that. Looking in the data deck for your school, I noticed that both reading and math for your STAR tests have exceeded what was expected. So I just wanted to call that out and say, way to go. That is what school is all about, like you said, and you're doing great work. You touched on this a little bit. The last thing I want to talk about is attendance. You touched on it a little bit and said there were some families that left at the end of the year. But I see big jumps in attendance, which of course, post-COVID, there was a little bit of that issue in 22. Those big jumps from 22 to 24 and some from 23 to 24, and I know we've only had a half a year. It just made me wonder, are there more absences in the last half of the year, usually in your school or an elementary school in our area versus before, or are we really just seeing that much more attendance this year versus previous years?
I think that we've gotten through the pandemic where things really kind of fell off the chart a little bit. In all my time at Oak Hill, we've been able to maintain, other than those 2 years, around 94% attendance overall. I don't really see a drop off in the spring, I can't say. I think we maintain, and that's, again, we try to keep it fun and focused. So I think that really helps keep kids wanting to come to school.
Yeah, and that's really great to hear that we're getting back to where we were pre-pandemic with those attendance numbers. Like you said, the kids have to be in class to continue our learning. So thank you for your presentation and that beautiful video with the girl that had her hand on the boy's shoulders, like, you can do this, you can do
That's
this.
exactly what happened.
Yeah.
He was so nervous to speak that she was just
Oh, this sweetheart.
encouraging him, and then the other little girl walking around. They were all in it together, and yeah,
Wow. We need more of that in adults.
I know.
Come on, that's beautiful.
They inspire me every day.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Just a question. You started off the conversation talking about identifying kindness as a focus for Oak Hill. I'm going to ask you to kind of comment on trends over the last, I don't know how long you've been in education, 20 years, whatever that may be. Do you see that I mean, obviously, I think sometimes we measure things or we try and measure things more. Are you seeing changed behavior in that are kids more unkind today? Is it cyclical, or is it just part of the learning and growing process that you saw 20 years ago, and there are just times or classes, sometimes I think, that just struggle a little bit more? So kind of a longer viewpoint, what do you see as the trajectory?
Well, I think a few things, definitely impact students and their relationships they have with their peers. One of them would be technology, social media, and time spent gaming. That time, the American Pediatric Association says 2 hours a day of screen time. We know that a lot of our students are exceeding that and then some. But what that does is, that's not the problem in itself. It's that they're not doing other things. They're not getting outside and getting together with their friends and having conflict and figuring out how to solve it. So it's a skill that was needed. And so that was identified through our survey. And like I said, 20% of our students identified they felt supported by the adults, both academically, socially, and emotionally, but they felt like the peer-to-peer interactions were where they really struggled. A lot of them identified bullying, but yet we discovered through conversations that it wasn't really bullying, which is a pattern of targeted abuse that makes a child feel unsafe. It was more name calling or a mean moment or someone who hurt my feelings. And how can we give students the skills they need to cope with those things and then connect for those friendships? Because that attendance and engagement, kids they want to be in school to be with their friends. That's where the connections, and I have friends today that I made in 3rd, 4th grade. Being able to have that makes life richer. And it makes us more able to focus on our learning as well. And so it's a win-win situation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Okay, we're moving on to our discussion and action items for tonight. First up is a discussion item. We have the generative AI as an innovation for both for both teaching and learning, presented by Ryan Cox, Director of Innovation and Instructional Technology. And Ryan, would you like to introduce your assistant for tonight? Welcome.
That would be my absolute honor. With me today is a fellow task force member on our AI task force. This is Jack Oker. Jack, I'm going to have you just grab that mic there, just a little bit about yourself so they know.
Hi, I'm Jack Oker. I'm a senior at Tech High School. I had the pleasure of taking part in the task force earlier this fall, which was an amazing opportunity to, I feel, actually make some change in the district. That's about it.
Okay. Dr. Putnam, Chair Haas, Board, we appreciate this opportunity to return to the board and get a chance to talk about some of the innovation ideas that we're exploring as a district. Today, we're going to take a look at just kind of a growing resource, a growing technology that really is taking a lot of the areas of business and industry and education and media kind of by storm. So we're talking about this new resource. It's arrived. It's available to both students and teachers. Proponents, those that are in favor of this change, say the shift will stretch the students' interest and increase motivation. Detractors, those against, are concerned that the basics of education are being undermined by devices. And a quote by Douglas Lapp from Fairfax County, Virginia, Americans are particularly prone to think technology will offer easy solutions to everything, when in fact it simply solves existing problems but does nothing automatically. So what we're talking about here, most of you may think it's AI. It's not. What I haven't told you yet is the year's 1975. All these are quotes, and they're talking about the pocket calculator. True story. I'll put that quote back again just so you get a sense. This is literally a quote from 1975, and again, that's what they're referring to 48 years ago is the Pocket calculator. As you kind of look at those quotes again. Yep. We're not done yet. So this is an actual article from Science News from that time, arguing the pros and cons of allowing calculators in classrooms. Pro, calculators make tedious math fun, fast, accurate. Educators and students agree. When used for creative problem solving, motivation in students seems spontaneous. The Pocket calculator. Cons, mechanization of fundamental classroom skills may leave kids unable to do simple math on paper. The cost for electricity or batteries may make operating the device daily too expensive. There are actually line item budgets, I'm sure, for batteries back then, or trying to figure that out. Another article here, these are teachers, math teachers actually picketing, protesting the use of calculators at too young of age. Pocket calculators, again, back in the 70s. And in 1975, the National Advisory on Mathematics Education issued a report on calculators suggesting that those in 8th grade and above should have access to them for all classwork and exams. A few years later, they moved that down to all students at all grade levels. So the point of me showing this is as we take a look at the growth and expansion of some of the opportunities we've got, education has gone through these cycles. And we're going to talk about these cycles a little bit here in a minute or so. And then we're going to get a chance to kind of demonstrate. I'll look at the teacher side and demonstrate what teachers may be able to use with AI. And then Jack is going to actually give real examples of how he can use it as a student here in our district. This is a quote, and we're going to start with this quote, and to be very transparent, Jack's going to finish with this quote because we want to ground this work in this amazing idea. This actually comes from the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Educational Technology. They did a report on generative AI last spring, I want to say March or April. And this is an image and a quote from that report. We envision a technology-enhanced future more like an electric bike and less like robot vacuums. On an electric bike, now think about on this bike, right? On an electric bike, the human is fully aware and fully in control, but their burden is less and their effort is multiplied by complementary technological enhancement. And that's really what we're looking at here. We start to see this idea of AI and generative resources. So first thing, I just need to lay a foundation. So we talk about innovation a lot. Obviously, my job title entails the word innovation. There's really two kinds of innovation that we hear about. There's what's called sustaining innovation, which is when they add a new feature, something new to something that exists, and it's generally accepted as makes it better. They come out with a new phone that looks very much like this, but it's got some new features, a new operating system that's got new memes or new cameras or new whatever, right? It's not changing it, it's more just improving. What we're seeing, and we see this cyclically in our society, is disruptive innovations. These are innovations that really do shake up the system. And naturally, because you shake up a system, you're going to get emotions. You're going to get those that are both for and against. And we absolutely plan for that. We absolutely expect that. And there are people that have strong feelings on both sides. And that's just what naturally happens. So, for example, in the 80s, we saw the personal computer became a disruptive innovation. Just how many of you saw this computer when you were a kid? Right? Yep, the Apple IIe. Or this is actually the Mac. This is the first Macintosh. And the personal computer really shook things up. My first personal computer was in like 3rd or 4th grade. It was a Commodore 64. Learned how to program BASIC on it, okay? And that changed. I mean, my parents and I still talk about the trajectory that changed with my personal life. Learning how to program on that little basic little computer in my bedroom, right? No monitor or TV hooked up to a TV. Cassette tape was what you saved your programs on, not a disk drive, a cassette tape, right? Then in the 90s, we saw the internet. Ask Jeeves, right? Yep. And again, that shook everything up. And everything was, oh my gosh, the internet is here and it's going to change everything. And there were people that were very for it, and there were people very against it. And we've learned to accommodate and to adjust with the internet, with that disruption. In the 2000s, we saw the mobile technology kind of movement start. Devices became off your desk and in your pockets. This is actually the launch in 2007 of the first iPhone. And I remember being at South Junior High as a teacher there, and our first student bringing in the first iPod Touch as a classroom teacher. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then 6 months later, I got for my birthday. So that's how it worked in our house. 2010s, social media, again, disrupted everything, changed everything. We saw movements throughout the world shooken up by social media and organized through social media. And this is the original The Facebook. If you go back to when Facebook first began, it was called The Facebook back then. And it was started for college students to connect with other college students, especially on the East Coast. Then it went West Coast, and then it spread everywhere. So our question here is generative AI that we're going to demonstrate for you here in a minute or so, is this the disruption for the 2020s? And we don't know yet. It's only 14 months old in its current iteration. It really launched in November of 2022 with ChatGPT. However, I want to just emphasize, AI has been around for a long time. When you were typing your computer years ago and it popped up a word, a suggested word, that's AI. When you did spell check, that's AI. Those examples have been around. Generative AI is when the AI itself, the artificial intelligence, begins to actually generate content based on prompts that you may provide to it. And the quality of the prompt is what kind of provides the quality of the output, right? What goes in is what comes out. And so Jack's going to talk about this part here. This will give you just a little bit of grounding in just some of the technology that someone like Jack or even our first few year teachers have seen.
So yeah, just some context in the situation. I am, like I said, a senior, so 18 years old, born the first day of 2006. I have never lived without Facebook or YouTube. So something that may appear somewhat recent is my normal. I never lived without it. It's always been a constant. And I truly believe that, let's say for the kindergartners who are 5 years old, they're going to feel the same way about AI.
A quote that we use once in a while is, it's only technology. I think some board members have heard me say this. It's only technology if you weren't born with it. Otherwise, it just is, right? I've got a little granddaughter who is 19 months old, and this is what the world she'll live in. Good or bad, this is the world she'll live in, and she'll learn to navigate, okay? All right, however, all this talk of technology, we want to ground also in the fact that it is still the teacher, it is still the educator. This AI is never meant to, nor do I believe, my opinion, that it will replace the power of a teacher. And so I just want to lay that at the table very, very early so that you know that as we're going through things, that we really look at AI being a companion to the educator, companion, a co-pilot. Not to use Microsoft's branding there, but they actually call their new AI called Copilot. And it's that idea of someone that works with you, that co-teacher that can help you. And you'll see how when I do some demonstrations here, how that tool can assist. So we still believe that teachers, that human intelligence is key for teaching critical skills and relationships, motivating students, that positive environment, providing high quality feedback on student performance and attending to students' basic needs. All the wonderful things that Principal Jokela just talked about and you just saw, we still believe that those are at the core of education. All right, we ready? Here we go. So let's take a look at some opportunities for teachers here. This is a breakdown of an average a teacher week, okay? And so you take a look at, and this is by the U.S. Department of Education again, so they took a look at things like 9.1% of the week is spent on student coaching and advising, 7.1% on student behavioral, social, emotional needs, those kind of pieces. 33.3% is actually involved in direct student instruction and engagement. On the right-hand side, 21% is on preparation, evaluation and feedback, 13, professional development, 6, and administrative duties, 10. That's by U.S. Department of Education. What they're acknowledging is that 49% of the time that teachers spend working is actually spent in direct interaction with students. Our goal with AI is how can we take some of those administrative pieces off, those non-instructional pieces, and how can we decrease that so we can increase time that teachers are directly working with our kids. Here we go. So I'm cheating a little bit because you don't want to watch me type. It's boring. So I have some prompts created ahead of time, okay? Imagine the 1980s when they used to put a chicken in the oven at the TV show and they took the chicken, that's done, right? So here's the prompt. So a prompt, again, is a very detailed description of what you're looking for. This is not a Google search. This is not a web search. I'm not searching for something else that someone wrote that might give me this information. The generative AI is going to create a resource using what's called large language models. Okay, it's looking for words and patterns that have been used to create a resource that I can now start to work with. All right? So I'm taking here prompt 1. I'm asking I'm asking ChatGPT to, and we're going to, by the way, use ChatGPT for both our demos. There's Bard, there's Microsoft Copilot, there's a lot of them out there. We're just using this one because this is the one that most people have heard about. So I'm going to ask the GPT to act as my instructional coach around a very specific Minnesota-based standard. I taught social studies, so I chose something that would be near and dear to my heart. And so I'm asking it to take a look at the exact standard and benchmark from the Minnesota Department of Education's resources. And I'm asking it to create a lesson plan for me at what we call a depth of knowledge level 1, which is a very just straight knowledge based, like remembering, bringing up recall, those kind of things, okay? So I take that, I'm gonna go ahead and put it in ChatGPT. Let's see what it gives us. This is all being generated specifically just for me. This is not a web search. No one made the exact search that I just asked. I asked the GPT to be an instructional coach. That's the key. I'm actually telling it what I want it to be. I almost said who, sorry. What I want it to be, right? And it's now provided me in a matter of 5 to 10 seconds, a full lesson plan, breakdown with materials based on design level 1, design or depth of knowledge level 1, everything that I need. That would have taken me as a classroom teacher quite a long time to actually plan out and figure out, but I'm not done. I thought I was setting a timer, but I thought better not. Prompt number 2. Now I'm asking it to adjust that lesson plan to a deeper level, what we call DOK3, more critical thinking, more analytical thinking, just a deeper understanding. Again, it's taking what I just created and it's now redoing that lesson plan based on the parameters of the prompt. Again, think of that time that teachers, what do we say, 20-some percent, 20% planning time? Imagine if you could reduce that down to 5 or 10%. By just literally just physically typing this out would have taken me time. Even if I had all the information in my head, just typing it out. Now if I keep going, I want to actually drill down more. Now I want to create 3 short answer questions about the above standard. And I want also the students to actually have to use critical thinking skills. There's my test ready to go. And again, as a classroom teacher, I would always review everything. And I can edit and I can change and I can make sure, I mean, there are times when you'll see GPTs that will kind of go off onto a tangent and you kind of reel those back in, you catch those. But again, always good teaching reviews that. If I keep going then, now I want a rubric. I thought of this morning, so that's why it's called 3B, because I didn't want to renumber everything. I was being lazy, sorry. So now I want a rubric for this, because as a teacher, I'm going to give the kids the essay questions ahead of time, because I want to test what they know, not what they can guess I'm going to put on the test. I want that deep level thinking. And so I'm going to tell them, hey guys, you know what? If you want, you can pick your grade. Here's what I'm looking for an A. Here's what a B would look like. Here's what a C. What do you want to do? How do you want to do this? And I don't want to spend a ton of time creating a rubric, so I'm going to have ChatGPT do it for me. And it's actually taking the information above and pulling it down, and it's creating this rubric in live real time for us. And it's all ready to go. And I actually was going to add another one. Can you give me sample answers at each grade level that I could give my students so that they get a sense of what depth of knowledge I'm looking for in terms of their own understanding. And you can see the rubric is all here for an A, B, C, D, and F. A is excellent down to F unsatisfactory. Still not done. Again, think about the hours it takes me to create all this. And I'm in maybe under 10 minutes. Create an additional question. I just thought of another question. Create an additional question that asks students to compare what they've learned about that topic. And I want to put in the context of today because I want to make it relevant for my kids. These are 9th graders. Sorry, it's down below here. There we go. And by the way, it just automatically assumed I knew I wanted a rubric created for that question as well. So it just went and made it for me. I didn't ask for it, it just assumed. Finally then, I know that I've got some kiddos that in my class that come to me with a little bit lower reading level. Great, I want to make sure that they can be successful too, because it's all about all the kids. And so if my question is written at a level that maybe they don't understand the question, but they do understand the content. And we've got teachers, by the way, right now that are already taking readings and putting it into AI resources and asking it for different reading levels so So all the kids are reading the same content. So it's a content level class, but at different reading levels, they can all be successful. So now I'm asking it to create questions 1 through 4 at a 4th grade reading level. By the way, I did try Lexile level as well. It worked. Yep. So now it's actually recreating everything, the questions, and it's also creating automatic rubrics for me as well to go with that. So now instead of the first question being high level, in-depth, complicated language, tell me a story about a long time ago during World War II, ... All of that took less than 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. That would have taken me days. I can remember times as a teacher of writing tests and then rewriting them until 1, 2 in the morning, and then getting them copied in the morning quickly and get them to kids by the first period that next day. Again, frees up my personal time, supports my mental health, and allows me to spend more time actually with my kids, helping support them and taking away some of that right side of that curve. So that's one example of what we're seeing here with AI. Okay. Okay, Jack, you ready? Okay, so now Jack is going to actually take you guys through what a student can do. He's going to, here, let me get you on the, 1 second, I'll get you on the screen here. We're going to bounce between 2 devices because he's got something special for you here. 1984, 40 years ago, Benjamin Bloom. If you got an education background, you probably heard about Benjamin Bloom and some of his research back in the day. Benjamin Bloom talked about what's called the 2 sigma problem 40 years ago. And the problem is we know that if we can bring mastery learning, where kids don't just move on because it's the calendar, but because they actually understand it, and also we can bring one-to-one tutoring to a student, we know that we can increase their level of understanding and success by a factor of 2. So you see the bell curve in the middle is a typical bell curve. With mastery learning, it's the purple. With the mastery plus one-to-one tutoring, it's the turquoise or blue, whatever color that is. Okay? The problem back in '84 was mastery learning was challenging and there was no way schools could afford a one-to-one tutoring. Why do you think that when a person's going to do a movie, they get a personal trainer, one-on-one personal trainer, get them physically ready for that movie? Because we know that one-on-one support is huge. So what Jack is going to show you is what a student could do with this resource. And bear with us here, we are tag teaming. Okay. Sorry, it didn't release. It just didn't release the Apple TV yet. Let's try this again. There we go. Thank you. Okay, Jack.
All right.
Turn the volume up. There you go. Here we go.
So just some examples, as Ryan was talking about, the importance of having, let's say, one-on-one tutoring and how beneficial that can be. Let's say last year I was struggling with a specific lesson, stoichiometry in chemistry. Stoichiometry.
By the way, Jack is really smart. So when he talks about this stuff, I have no idea. So he explained to me upstairs before this, actually. What is it called again?
Stoichiometry. So do you want it to define it?
Sure, you go ahead.
Can you explain stoichiometry to me at a 10th grade chemistry level?
Stoichiometry is like a recipe for chemical reactions. It helps us figure out the right amounts of reactants and products. Imagine it as a balance of quantities needed and produced. Anything specific you'd like to know?
Could you give me an example problem to help me practice?
Absolutely. Let's say we have a reaction, 2H2 plus O2, 2H2O. If you have 4 moles of H2, how many moles of O2 do you need?
I'm struggling a little bit with that question. Could you start with the first step?
Sure thing. First, check the balanced equation. It shows that 2 moles of H2 react with 1 mole of O2. Since you have 4 moles of H2, you'll need to find out how many moles of O2 that corresponds to. Any idea how to do that?
Not right now. I'd have to write it out.
No worries. To find moles of O2, use the ratio from the equation. 2 moles H2 to 1 mole O2. Since you have 4 moles of H2, multiply by the ratio 4 moles H2, 1 mole O2s for 2 moles H2. What do you get?
Can we shift to history?
There we go, good.
Of course, we're flexible. What's on your mind?
Could you explain in a bullet point format the difference between the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution?
Certainly. Instead, how about I explain it in a straightforward way without bullet points? It might be easier to follow.
Sounds great to me.
Awesome. So, the Articles of Confederation was the first attempt at a U.S. government. It made states powerful, but the central government weak. This caused problems like no taxing authority and no national army. Later, the Constitution was created to fix these.
And then I was curious.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Because I clicked you on accident. If anyone here had a specific subject that they wanted to talk about, maybe something that they struggled with when they were in school. So anything that you can think of?
Great idea. Anyone have a topic from school?
How many people are taking computer science now and in the past?
Okay. Can you give me a rough estimate of how many people have taken computer science courses?
As of my last knowledge update in January 2022, millions of people worldwide have taken computer science courses. The exact number can change, so it's always good to check the latest statistics. Interested in a specific aspect or region?
Yes.
Minnesota?
Sure thing. Could you specify the region or aspect you're interested in regarding computers?
What is the percentage of kids that have had computer science classes in Minnesota? And how has that changed over time?
Let's see what it gives us. What percentage of students in Minnesota have taken computer science classes, and how has that changed over time?
I don't have real-time data, but as of my last update in January 2022, the percentage of students taking computer science in Minnesota was gradually increasing. For the latest and most accurate information, I recommend checking recent education reports or statistics from reliable sources specific to Minnesota. Anything else you're curious about?
Actually, it's declining. Now, at one time, we were the top in the nation. We're now the bottom in the nation. We're down to 28% of our students take computer classes. I think the legislature either just addressed it or they're in the process of addressing it.
I think that's one thing it's only given the information that it can find on the internet from when it was trained.
You mind, ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version that we're demonstrating right now, it ingests data, and the last data ingest was about a year and a half ago. So you're going to see information. If we went to GPT-4 or Bard, Gemini, or Copilot, some of those resources, you get more up-to-date information.
The nice thing about
More on the cheap,
the nice thing is this is accessible to anyone right now.
for free. Yep, and we're excited to address that in a few slides. We're very excited for that, yep.
Great. Do you want to switch it back?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Monica, go ahead.
So I do have a question for the thing or for you.
Okay.
So what is your knowledge-based data and how do you discriminate the accuracy of it?
So knowledge-based data. I
You're
think that,
asking Jack or the GPT?
GPT.
okay. Would you mind repeating that, just so I make sure I get it right?
Where do you get from your knowledge-based data and how do you discriminate the accuracy of it?
What do you get from your knowledge-based data, and how do you discriminate what is accurate from it?
I pull information from a diverse range of sources available on the internet. Up until my last
My iPad's been having some weird things, so that's not GPT's fault. How do you just define your accuracy and where do you get your data from?
I strive for accuracy by relying on reliable sources during my training. Accuracy is determined by the consensus and credibility of the information available up until January 2022. I don't have direct access to databases or real-time information. If you're experiencing any issues, it might be external factors. Can you provide more details about what seems unusual?
So again, the free version stopped ingesting data a couple years ago. They have put their resources toward GPT-4, any future work with OpenAI. But again, if you get to those other resources I mentioned, you'll get to GPT-4, which is more live. Yeah, right? Okay.
But it just started talking about reliable sources. What does it call? What does it mean, reliable sources to GPT?
It could be ingesting information from any resources, speeches, writings, anything at all. The cool part about Bard, if you get a chance to ever check out Bard, is Bard, and I think Copilot, but I know Bard will actually cite its sources in some of the claims. This one does not do that. The GPT 3.5 does not, but Bard will actually leave footnotes and links you can go check out where it made certain data points. Each one's a little bit different how they work through those data points.
Scraping the internet, they also pick up a lot of biases, and you have to design your prompts to eliminate some of the biases.
Always reviewing, that's a great, thank you, appreciate that. Always reviewing the data outputs is huge, because like anything, what goes in is what comes out.
Biases are determined by who? And what's biased to you may not be biased to me. If I was a government and I wanted to control the people and what they thought and what they saw and what they heard, this is exactly what I would do. And I'd make sure that what's a reliable source? It's any source that I say is reliable.
100%.
And who is that? Who's there behind that?
Luckily for all.
Never know. Never will know. So it's a very, very dangerous piece of information. And I don't trust, I mean, you're showing me how you can do lesson plans in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't trust those.
Sure.
I would absolutely not trust those. And if we had a teacher relying on those, I would be very upset about that, because we have no idea what's in there. We have no idea what's accurate, what's inaccurate, where those sources are coming from, we have no idea.
100% agree, and that's why that review of all sources that come out and relying on the human intelligence that we mentioned earlier is absolutely key. The phrase that the U.S. Department of Education kept repeating over and over again in the report is keeping this human-centered. And so it acts as that co-pilot, and of course there can be bias, of course there can be misinformation, and that's the role of the teacher to go through and to either correct and or update any information that might be in there. The same could be said if a human being was doing X, Y, and Z, they could also bring in some bias or some misinformation. The understanding of media literacy and AI literacy is more important, exactly what you're saying, Al, is more important now than ever. The ability for these resources to create videos and images and information that people will claim is true is 100% a concern. And that's why that human intelligence is now more important than ever. I cannot agree with you more.
But human intelligence can also create bias.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yep.
And, it's a really dangerous tool.
Yeah, Natalie. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Shannon. Have it.
Seeing that happen in 10 minutes, as a teacher who taught 20 years ago, it's just like that would have, I'll just say this. I had to write a curriculum. I was 21, right out of college. I suddenly was given, I thought I was just going to teach choir, but I also needed to teach general music. And I said, okay, where are the books for general music? We don't have any. Okay, what am I supposed to teach? Well, you make it up. So I had exactly 2 weeks before my class started, and I had to make up a whole curriculum. And the standards, of course, are there, but just because the standards are there doesn't mean that I have anything to teach from. So it was all up to me and my education and my professionalism, right, to know what these students needed to know and how they could know it. But then I had to pull from tons of sources to finally get to the point where I had some lesson plans, to start with and then go from there. So to me, this isn't actually anything new, it's just faster, because every single source that I knew what I wanted to teach and I knew how I wanted to teach it, but I needed assistance from some sources. And so that brings it back to when you are teaching teachers, this is a whole new way that you'd have to teach from when I was in school, right? Because it's the same issue of you're the professional, you know what the standards are, you know how to teach them, and you're the one who is in charge of bringing in extra things that you don't have. So I mean, I guess the dangerous part of it is what we experienced from the 70s and on. Everything new is dangerous. But it's that because anybody can use it any way they want. But our teachers aren't dangerous. Our teachers are professionals. And so when this is just a tool, I guess, I wish I had this tool 20 years ago when I was having to do a whole course in 2 weeks is what I'm saying.
This is absolutely fascinating. Thank you for the presentation. I think you should go on the road because I think that, I'm going to go and tell people they should watch the school board meeting on replay because what else do you have to do on a Wednesday night or Thursday night or anything else? But because this is not the world that I live in. Like it scares me. That said, to Al's point, there's bias everywhere. Just as Natalie explained, I knew what I wanted to teach. That in and of itself said that the teacher has power, has ability to introduce bias. So in some ways, this can actually tackle that a little bit in that you were deciding what you were using. This, under the right algorithms or whatever, might pull from a larger, broad spectrum. When, as a district, do we begin talking, and what's the age-appropriate level, about critical thinking and ethics in a way that, I think the greatest thing education has to do going forward is teach about those two things. When do we introduce that into the curriculum in a way that it makes sense to students? And then I do want, Jack, this is fascinating. I grew up with an English teacher mom, and we always talk about the lack of writing skills in students because now you can ask somebody to write something for you. As a student, and he just said you're smart and you do these things, but do you feel like you're prepared to take the information and could you go back into it and adjust it so it reflects not just somebody else's thinking, but really what you want to project about an idea? Would you, well, one is take the time, but secondly, would you feel prepared to do so?
I would say absolutely, especially because there's limited differences in what AI does for you, as let's say, even if you are trying to cheat. That's one of the most common examples is plagiarism cheating. So if you ask it to write this essay for you, one, you can use it as an outline. One, you can use it as key points that you would like to bring up in your own words. But also, I don't see how it's different than asking your peer and then rewording it yourself. It's for the people who are going to, cheating is going to happen. It's reality. And then it's how we face that consequences, which I believe might be faced in the later part of the slideshow.
Yeah, a little bit. Stanford's done a couple studies around this, Heather, that one is around, one example is around cheating. They're doing a longitudinal study the last, I think it's 15 years. They released this, I think, in the summertime, maybe, early fall. And they found that in the last year with GPT that that cheating has not really gone up. That students, if a student is going to plagiarize, there was other ways to do it. There always was. In terms of the tutor part, I was really fortunate. I had a ChatGPT that sat every time I wrote a paper. It was called Mom. My mom was a former teacher. And so every time any one of us wrote a paper, we had to sit next to mom on the couch and have the torture of having her go through that paper line by line and us rolling our eyes and her saying, "Do you want me to do this or not?" "Yes, of course we'll do it." Right. And so I was fortunate. Some kids don't have that capacity. They don't have that opportunity to have that with a parent that is able to sit next to them in the same way. And so if you provide every student someday, maybe not now, but someday, maybe with a tutor where I can actually say, "Here's my paper, can you give me some feedback on it?" I've tried that with one of my thesis for grad school. I tried it, I went back and got it, and it came in and it actually gave me suggestions that I missed when I had that thesis submitted years ago.
And I would just make a comment because, again, my mom was an English teacher to this day, so I have 2 kids in college right now. Both Liam and Lucas call my mom when they have papers due, or they get on FaceTime or whatever, and she walks through it and helps them, and they go back and forth because her belief as an English teacher is the only way to be a good writer is to write and get really specific critical thinking, which probably borders on the edge of plagiarism or cheating, because someone has to help you format and think about how your words flow and which is what this does. It also, and this probably is more academic, but it lends the thought that, as we at the collegiate level and even with faculty and presidents of Harvard and such get into plagiarism conversations, we may have to redefine original thought. Like, it may not be just about the writing piece of it. It may be that original thought is putting together the questions you're asking ChatGPT to bring together to present it in a new and different way for the seeking of knowledge, so to speak. So I think that this pushes us to think differently about what are we trying to achieve. Are we trying to achieve that in all cases, and I had this argument, I taught a class when I was at the University of Denver, and I had this argument with a student. Her writing was atrocious, and she said, "But you should be grading on the content and not on the writing. This isn't an English class." And I said, "Well, if I can't understand the point you're trying to get across because the language and the context isn't right, then I can't grade the content without it." But this gives us an opportunity. It's still original thought, and it maybe help students in general get to a better place, and still, if the ultimate goal is for them to be more learned, we still achieve that.
Yeah, my comments earlier, I'm not as concerned about the fact that it's existed for a long, long time, and it's a fact, it does exist. And I'm not terribly concerned about a teacher's bias. I'm not terribly concerned about a student's cheating. What I'm terribly concerned about with this is the scale on which bias can occur. And it's a very few people, it's 10, 20, 30 people that control the bias that everybody experiences. A teacher can control the bias of 100 students. A student can turn in a test where they cheated and it's one student and they have to deal with their issues. But something like this can create bias, and it can create changes in a society that are happening. Well, it's already here. I mean, the bias is already here in Google. Try Google searching things, and certain things, not right now. Certain things come up, other things don't. And it's like if Google was real and it was a real resource, you would Google search something and it would come up and it would give you all of the different opinions. And then it would be up to you to use your intelligence to come up with what is correct and what isn't correct. But anytime that somebody starts telling me that we just listen to the news right now, we need to make sure that there's not any disinformation out there. What's disinformation? What you don't like? Or is disinformation, who gets to decide what's disinformation? And then we ban it from anyone hearing it or being able to hear it, and basically silence a whole class of people. And that's what I don't like about this stuff, is the scale on which it can occur and the number of people, and it's who's in control that's important, not what is the truth. So,
What a great example of the definition I presented earlier of disruptive innovation. I mean, if this was a new feature on our phone, this conversation would take 2 minutes. We'd all love it. The fact that we've got such strong different opinions, this is fantastic, because this is by definition the disruptive part. I can only imagine what it must have felt like, 30, 40 years ago when the internet first came about, what that must have felt in these same kind of conversations about information and whatnot. So I want to back up what Scott was mentioning earlier. This is the graphic that I believe maybe Scott may have seen recently. And this is a challenge that Dr. Putnam has kind of laid at my feet. Is not just looking at the resources you just saw, but how can we also integrate computer science into our district at a higher level? As Scott mentioned, Minnesota, as they say out here, computer science last to first. Minnesota's on a mission. And Minnesota ranked recently, according to code.org, we're ranked last in terms of computer science offerings in the United States. And so AI will play a part of that, because one of the areas, the segments of society that could be most impacted recently, like soon, could be computer science. The idea of coding, I can go in and I can say, using Python, generate code that will take and make a red ball bounce across the screen. Do something simple. Okay, no problem. There's the code. So this idea of coding and programming is going to change so much, and integrating this is going to be a major tool for programmers. Already is, I shouldn't say it's going to be, it already is becoming a major program. So we're going to integrate some of these ideas going forward, and I really appreciate Scott bringing up that computer science concern, because it's one that, like I said, Dr. Putnam has said, it's time around. Let's look at this one. So quickly then, the task force summary. We met in the fall, September, October, 5 consecutive Thursdays. I think it was Thursdays. And it was, we had parents, we had administrators, we had teachers, we had students. We had 4 students, I think, generally showed up most times. We had some sports and things that, normal kid stuff. And so this is a term that we've really, or some vocabulary we've really tried to integrate into our conversations, is both the fuel and friction. We always talk about the fuel, all the great things that something's going to be, but we've got to also address the friction involved. And I heard Monica say the idea of cheating or plagiarism is something that she's concerned about, and it's right there at the top of our list, is how do we start to educate our kids? How do we educate and support our teachers as this new disruptive technology becomes more and more prevalent in our society? So you can see there some of the fuels that this may bring, and then naturally some of the frictions that we wanted to acknowledge as part of our task force document. This part's yours, Jack.
And then here are some of the main ideas we wanted to present, and this was our main focus while we were in this task force. Some of you may recognize some of the wording from the mission statement. We will use generative AI in a responsible and ethical manner to support our mission of providing safe and caring climate and culture for all learners, specifically learners, not just students, but everyone involved. We will use generative AI to improve the teaching and learning experience for all students, with a focus on academic excellence, cybersecurity, and privacy, and take active steps to prevent bias and misinformation. We'll use generative AI in partnership with our surrounding community to prepare and empower all learners for success in today's and tomorrow's society.
And then Tammy DeLand's team kind of encompassed a lot of the work that the AI task force did into an image. And this task force, the document, the guiding principles that we came up with will be available soon. We wanted to make sure that we were able to present this information to you folks first before we share that out. And then Jack's just going to restate this call to action as we think about the next months and years.
And it's a tool. We envision a technology-enhanced future more like an electric bike and less like a robot vacuum. On an electric bike, the human is fully aware and fully in control, but their burden is less, and the effort is multiplied by the complementary technological enhancements.
Already have some questions. Any others?
I could go on about biases and cognitive distortions and things of that sort, which most technology will likely rid itself of, by the way. I think the real question, though, might be, is the singularity upon us? And I do expect an answer.
One of the nice things about artificial intelligence, which does come from the bias aspect too, is it's not who's controlling it, it's what it learns from. And luckily, with everything that's available right now, it is learning from Google and all these resources that are available right now. It just consolidates it into an easily accessible manner.
So, Ryan, thank you for the presentation. What's your name again?
Jack.
Jack. Thank you, Jack, for being here and for participating on this. This is great. I think that this is a great tool, and I am happy that we are embracing it. The part that I'm missing in the presentation is the how. So you're showing this, and this is great, and you're showing the how. Looking at you, Jack, using it, and the smart questions that you had, although impressive, the result is expected. In my experience, people that are as smart as you are know how to use tools better than people that are not. So because this is a tool, I am more concerned about the people that are that are not used to manage tools. And how, so I'm concerned about the student level, in how the student level will learn to use the tool to really get what is good out of it, and not just to maybe do the homework. And I'm not expecting an answer right now for it. I'm also concerned about the teacher that has to spend their whole career writing curriculum and doing the stuff that they're doing, and they will not find time in their busy schedule that is already scheduled to work with a tool like this.
Sure.
Or not to work on it, but also to learn how to use it in a way that is effective. The problem with this technology and technology these days, and technology since the time that you were born, and YouTube and all those things, is that go to a very fast pace. And for people that did not grow up with it, it's really hard to catch up. And the problem that we have about not catching up is that the people that are born with it, they believe that they know it all, and they believe that they know how to use it better than their parents.
Right.
And then we have this example that I actually heard in a conference of this mathematician talking about, oh, I see these kids, I see these adults looking at the TV and saying, oh my God, I don't know how to use this thing. I'm gonna ask my 10-year-old to do it and teach it for me. And this person was saying, oh, that looks cute. How smart is a 10-year-old? No. This is not cute. This is how lazy you are, that not learning how to use your TV and maybe using it and teaching your 10-year-old how to properly use the device. So that is my concern. How do we catch up? How do we adults, not born with this technology, are prepared to catch up, to really face what the challenges are that the students that don't have the maturity level to analyze the tool or what the tool is giving them are going to, how are they going to help them, and how are we going to support them? How are you going to support everybody else?
Sure. So we've already released to our staff through some of the choice days. One of them is Introduction to AI. It's the very first course is, and all the material comes from code.org, which is the organization that Scott heard the founder, I think the founder and CEO, speak in Minnesota recently. So we've had hundreds of teachers that have already on the Choices Day taken the introduction, which is just kind of laying the groundwork. It's a conversation between Hadi, which is who Scott saw at the MSBA conference recently, and Sal Khan, the founder of Khan Academy, talk just through just what AI is and just get that ground level. We've also harvested their resources to create asynchronous courses that teachers can take during choices time when they're interested, when they're ready. So we hit it not just as a blanket, we're all going to learn at one time, but when you have the need, it's available for 4 other classes that walk through how to use it responsibly in your classroom, how to do X, Y, and Z. We're also finalizing details for this summer to do a one-day for a set number of teachers. Amy's been helping us with some of the funding resources for that, for AI Bootcamp. And this will be an all-day opportunity with Katie, who you met earlier presentations, Katie Herbold, one of our innovation coaches, Kyle Turker, another innovation coach, myself, to actually walk through how to make use of these. Monica, we do things very ground level in our department, We don't do a lot of like, we're all going to learn at one time because we know that the needs are different. So when it comes to this, we'll do it from the ground up as people have needs, and we go in and help out. But we've created these resources already. As far as the kids go, that's part of, I think, this question here that Lori is challenging us with is integrating this. I could see a future class someday, maybe, again, maybe, of being like AI literacy. Districts have done digital literacy for years. Maybe it's an AI literacy where you learn how to do good prompts. You learn how to recognize bias in media and really think evaluatively about what you're seeing and based on what your ideas are. This is going to be an industry that you can now, already today in 2024, you can now earn up to $300,000 a year being a prompt engineer for companies. It's incredible, the salaries that are involved in this. And if we can integrate this into this growth in computer science that Lori is looking at exploring as a district and making that part of it, I think is what you're looking for. You're welcome.
Regarding cheating with that, if a teacher thinks that the student's paper was created by ChatGPT, the teacher can enter that into the ChatGPT and ask, "Did you write this?" And the ChatGPT does not lie. It'll say, "Yes, I wrote that. You just hung your student."
So detectors, if that's kind of what you're asking for, resources out there called AI detectors. There's been research, again, Stanford did one, that kind of the most famous study last spring, that they've looked at the AI detectors and they tend to create false positives towards certain students, especially EL students, because of how an EL student is taught to read and write. It's very structured, and so it comes across as more of a ChatGPT style. So universities like Harvard, Yale, University of Chicago, Stanford, St. John, St. Ben's have publicly actually kind of, I don't want to say dissuaded, shied away from using AI detectors themselves. We've had teachers that have tried multiple AI detectors, and they'll get rates in the 90s, saying it's 90% AI, down to I think 14%, same paper. And so we're a little bit leery of that. West Virginia and North Carolina most recently put out, as states, 4 states, by the way, have put out actual guidance for their educators. California, Oregon, North Carolina, and West Virginia. North Carolina was a few days ago. West Virginia was 2 weeks ago. The other 2 were in this fall. West Virginia and North Carolina both have come out publicly in their documents and said the reliability of AI detectors just isn't there yet, and we just don't encourage them. So instead, how do you look at cheating? There are resources that are like one's called what's it called again?
Draftback.
Draftback. I always forget the name. I want to say Backdraft. So where it can actually watch a video of you typing your paper. So if you're typing, all of a sudden, bam, 5 pages show up, you copied and pasted. It'll do that. But more importantly than that even is as we start to explore writing, 1975, we heard probably for the first time where math teachers had to say, "Show your work." Because what did you do prior to that? Paper and pencil, you're showing your work. So as we explore with language arts and writing, how do we help students show their work in a different way in 2024, the same challenges that maybe our teachers faced almost 50 years ago? And we're looking at some of those resources now. Thank you.
I wanted to hear from Jack about what your plans are after graduation.
A variety of things. I'm still waiting back from a couple responses from colleges, but my goal is to go into chemical engineering.
No way. That's what my son is doing. He's at Apollo. He got accepted into U of M for chemical engineering. So,
Nice, that's exciting.
exciting. That sounds right up your very smart alley. So I was going to say that, my dad has a mechanical engineering degree. He graduated from college in 1982. Aaron's going to have, if he goes all 4 years and graduates, a chemical engineering degree in 2028. And even though there's 2 different types of engineering, just think of the difference in this sort of, what's going to happen with Aaron in his 4 years of college versus what my dad could have never imagined. And so I say that to say that we have to we have to have literacy for our kids in this, because that's part of college and career preparedness. So thank you for presenting this to us and being here for this reason. I think the Google bias issue is real, and especially owning my own, not owning my own, but having my own small company, Google bias is a lot based on capitalism. It's who can pay the most to get to the top, and that's part of understanding how to sort through sources. We have to know that when you go to Google, you're probably going to, if you really want real stuff, you're going to need to go through a few pages to not have paid advertisements, basically. So thank you for bringing this to us, and I think it's nothing new necessarily. It's like enhanced of what's already happening, but this is the same discussion that, like you said from the beginning, that we've had. How do we utilize this and still be smart about it? So, and thank you so much for being here, Jack, and good luck
Thanks.
with
Thanks for
chemical
having me.
engineering.
Just gonna say, just because I'm complaining about it, don't think that I'm not interested in it, or
no.
or don't think that it's interesting. But as you weren't here last week, Ryan, or at our last meeting when I brought up the subject of if we're teaching. Okay, I gotta think. I gotta kind of go back and just state the way that I stated it before. It's like, as society moves forward, things get more complicated and more complicated, and we make progress and we make progress and we make progress on top of progress, right? But yet you go back into junior high school and we're still teaching the fundamentals of math. We're teaching Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry. We're teaching the same courses. And we're spending a lot of time teaching those courses and the fundamentals of math, when in reality, it isn't something that very many of those kids are going to use, because there's tools available like AI or like calculators that do that work for you. So you may learn how to do a differential equation, which will take you years to learn. But if you learn that, you can put it into a calculator or into AI and you can have your answer in a split second. And that's what you're going to do if you go on to a career. So at some point in time, I would think that the education system is going to have to quit saying, show your work, and understand that the answers are coming from a different method. But that's reality nowadays. Those tools are there and they're not going away. So I wouldn't, and the fact that you can't do a longhand version of something, or that you can't sit down and demonstrate to me that you have all the knowledge of the fundamentals of where this came from, doesn't mean that you don't know how to use that and you don't know how to get that. And only being able to bypass all of that work are we going to be able to move forward and do more complex things and solve more problems. So I just, from an education standpoint, at some point in time, I think education is going to look a lot different than what it does right now. And freeing up some of those fundamentals of courses in favor of teaching a little bit more progressive and a little bit more forward-thinking type of, and it wouldn't be knowledge, because it's not up here, it's coming from down here, but using those tools and learning how to use those tools is what's going to be important to move forward in a career and world. So just a thought.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. My thought is for all. So I hear what you're saying. I want you to think about something, and I want us to think about something about those specific skills. I mean, very specific about the question in math and fundamentals of math, and why do we learn that, and if we're going to use that later. Because I work with the students, and that question comes about quite often. Like, yeah, when am I going to use this? When am I going to do this equation? When I study engineering, I I do remember doing, I don't know how many exercises of limits. And I don't know if you know limits, but you do tons and tons of exercises. You might know limits, tons and tons of exercises of limits. And then one day, my teacher shows me, how do you say derivative? Derivative? Yeah, a derivative. A derivative, that's the stupid limits that you take like five pages doing in one step. And I was like, what? Why am I have to do the 100 limits? Because that trains your brain, and it trains you in a different way. We still have to do the math, the fundamental math, the stupid math, the simple math, the dummies math. We still have to do it to learn how to train our brain, so when we get IA, we know what is that. And also, so we can design that, and we don't get Terminator kind of things and have computers designing themselves. That will be more than bias at that point. So I'd like to have a conversation about what is, there is science and there is experience about what is behind the curriculum, because it's not only because we're going to be engineers, and I wanted to be an artist at some point. And I mean, there is math all over the world. There is math in plants. You go to agronomy and there is math there in how the plants develop themselves. There is math in music. In the kids that do well in math, they do well in music, and vice versa. So we don't learn only to practice the thing. Learning is beyond that, and is something that we have to develop so our brains develop and we are smarter every day and more evolved. And I like to talk more about that and not just thinking the just use of the tool.
For Jack, 50 years ago, my brother graduated from the University of Minnesota in chemical engineering with a computer emphasis. And he got involved in a little company called Cray Research that builds supercomputers. You've got a really good field to go into.
Thanks. That's exciting.
I just wanted to say thank you, actually, to this entire team. I know, because we've been told by numerous people around the state, that the work of this task force was forward-thinking and thorough and aligned really well with a lot of the other work that was happening separately around the nation, which I think is pretty amazing for some students and teachers and admin from St. Cloud. And this team is who presented at MASA when that's the one that we went up to in Duluth, and this work is what the School Board Association asked to take. And so I want to say a sincere thank you to you guys for being on the task force and for coming tonight, Jack especially, for being willing to be here and have this conversation and to represent not only you and your family, but our school so very well. And I also want to take a moment to just thank this board, because this is a conversation that not a lot of boards are having right now, and that we are able to have to take something that is complex and is unknown and to treat it with such care and respect, balancing caution with knowing that this is where we're at. And really embracing that we can't turn away from this, right? And that is not the response of all school leaders and teachers and administrators and students. And so I am deeply grateful to you guys for the work that you have led and that you will continue, and to this board for being willing to be in it with us and help us find our way through. So thank you.
Thank you for helping set that up.
Can I just say one thing specifically for Jack, right? Your teachers now know this tool is out there for you to use. How are they checking to make sure you're really learning and critically thinking, knowing that you can do just that? Could you just share that quick for our folks?
So absolutely. One thing that we specifically talked about at the task force a lot was the implementation of, first off, every language arts teacher, every history teacher I've talked to, because I went through everyone at Tech that I know, said it's involving if they know the students, getting that personal connection first, and then having the groundwork to see, is their handwriting matching what's happening? Because even the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization said that the human values being present in assignments is something that needs to be going toward, or something we need to be going towards. So it's not just content understanding, but also applying a human aspect to it. So as Al said, it's not just content. It's something that enhances us as humans, that therefore AI won't replace that. So that's something to look forward to. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to not so exciting, sorry, board policies. Yeah. Okay, so first up for board policies, we have the second reading of proposed new board policy 621 Literacy and Read Act. Again, second reading being presented by Dr. Mike Rivard, Assistant Superintendent of Education Services.
Thank you, Chair Haas and members of the board. And I can't just leave that hanging out there. I would love to have AI helping sometimes on these, as MSBA is such a great help, and I do wonder sometimes whether they're utilizing AI. And a shout out to Jack. Jack is one of my former students, and as a little boy, he was very similar in his presentation. And his father's a firefighter, and his mother is one of our paraprofessionals within the district. They are a wonderful family, and Jack's a wonderful product of our schools. This is a second reading for the Literacy and Reads Act. This is a new board policy. The other three policies that we'll be reviewing tonight are products of the 2023 legislative session that we're trying to continue to update, and Gary will participate in those. For the Read Act, for the policy related to the Read Act, as I reviewed last board meeting, this is coming directly from the actual statute. So MSBA gathered the information from the statute and almost word for word included it in the policy. So I'll briefly go through it again. I know we spent a little bit more time on it last time, but as it notes right from the purpose statements, this policy is to align with the READ Act. And by having it almost be word for word from definitions on down, our friends at MSBA has ensured that we do align. They do go through the definition of what the science of reading includes. I won't go through each of those. And as you go through the policy, it does a nice job of, in terms of talking about literacy, starting at the screening and moving its way through implementation and then along with assessment. So what we know with the READ Act, it's asking us to ensure that we have an evidence-based reading screener. Within our school district, we do with Fastbridge. It asks to ensure that we are doing notifications with families. We do this through conferences. We do this through ensuring that in Skyward, that scores from those screeners are included. We did get some feedback during our last board meeting to ensure that we're looking at all sorts of opportunities to make sure that if students are struggling in their reading proficiency, that as we move forward, we're looking at multiple ways of getting that information out to parents.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Can I ask on C there? Schools at least biannually, after administering each screener, must give the parent of each student. Should that be just parent, or should, in other policies, we've said parent or caregiver, or parent or guardian, or parent or?
We've seen parent and we've seen families being used interchangeably, but we certainly, do you have a recommendation for that, Al? Yep. Thank you. Go ahead, Monica.
Just could you change the order of the sentence because it looks weird. Must give the parent of caregiver, like I would say, most informed. Yeah, instead of most giving timed information, and most informed the parent, most timely informed, or just fix the sentence.
And I'm going to put it in parentheses so that I don't utilize a lot of our time with the crossing out of words and how that often takes more time, especially in Google, on a Google Doc or in DocX. So it does ask us to ensure that we're doing that, and we do that through conferences and utilizing other methods. If we are having students participate in any interventions, which the policy would be asking us to do, we'd be getting parent permission before we do so. So that would also be part of the notice that parents would be given, and also the discussion that we'd want to ensure that's happening for our students with the parents to ensure that we're doing the right thing for intervention for kids. It moves on to section 5, which is identification and reports. And absolutely.
Why is the D part there?
So the section on section D says, as we're going through the screening of students, and if a student were to do very well on a screener, what section D is indicating that cannot stop a parent from asking for a request for a special education evaluation, that as a school district or as school staff, we wouldn't be able to utilize the screener and how a child might be doing on a screener to say, no, this is not a reason why we wouldn't do an assessment for special education.
So if you explain that to me, I would not get that from that sentence.
Do you have a recommendation on how you'd like to change the wording of that, or anything else from a board member?
So it says the school district may not use this section to deny a student's right to special education evaluation. And what you're saying is that the screening is for the what did you say, that the parent can do the screening?
No, so forgive me. So as a matter of doing a special education evaluation, oftentimes you're going to see pre-referral interventions going on, whatnot. But before a special education evaluation were to start, you're going to look at screening information regarding a child's reading skills. And if a child's reading skills was very high, and a parent was still requesting a special education evaluation, as a school district, no school district can use that screening material to be the reason why you would say no to a parent and deny that right to have a special education evaluation.
Mike, can you change the language, go back down to just say, I think if you say the school district may not use the outcome of
May not use
the
this
screener.
screening. I think that what we're trying to clarify is that this screening is not a special education assessment, isn't it?
No, what it's saying is that the results
The
of the
outcome.
screener is not something that you would use when working with a parent to deny the opportunity for the assessment, one way or the other. That you would use the information from the screener when maybe making a determination moving forward, but you couldn't use the information from the screener to say, no, we're not going to do an assessment for your child.
Okay, so Heather, go ahead. What were you saying? Yeah.
So what you would see is,
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I appreciate the feedback. Moving on to section 5 goes into identification and reporting and what our reporting requirements are. In that we currently are ahead of most school districts in that we have a literacy plan. This has been reviewed with the school board during the 2023 calendar year, and we'll be having some more information shared with us as we do a greater in-depth look into how the READS Act is affecting the schools in ISD 742, and that's going to happen within the next month. We're going to have a presentation from Ms. Stebner related to that. So we already have a literacy plan in place, which is what the statute and board policy now will have us doing and ensuring that we're submitting data to the Minnesota Department of Education by June 15th every year. The data that they're looking for is related to that screening information, and that kids are moving forward on learning the basic concepts of reading related to phonemic awareness, phonics, decoding, fluency, and oral language, which is directly part of our literacy plan. So those things we've already have built in, and I would say we're much more prepared than maybe some other districts. What you've seen coming out of MDE is actually a structure of what they want that to look like, and we are already down the road on that. So that's good news for District 742. Monica, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so when I was reading this thing at the beginning, so what I was hoping to find was also some information or some parts of the policy that will have to do with multilingual learners, and how might not be for this policy, but how do we assess for the special education or not, considering that I'm talking about the students that are in these early grades but are not English proficiency.
And
So how is that considered?
the policy and the statute still calls for us to do screeners with those students. And the policy and the statute does ask that we're ensuring that those students are reading at their grade level. So the challenge is now there for us as the school district and the state to bring those students along faster maybe than ever before in their reading skills. We know that that's a challenge, but it is the statute and how it's looking at. Before, they were asking to ensure that we had children reading by grade 3, and now that's looked at as reading at every grade level at where they're supposed to be at that grade level.
Do we do assessments in other languages?
For their reading assessment of their fluency in other languages.
No, for the language development, I believe, is what you need to be doing.
That's not called for within the statute.
But we do it?
We do it for our immersion programming. I would say our newcomers, especially at the high school, we have a language arts Spanish class that we utilize in helping children transition as newcomers.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is that in my experience, or what I have learned in this trajectory, is that if students have, if a child is learning to talk, and they talk in Spanish in their home, and they go to school and they speak in English in their school, they're going to test very low in English. But to strengthen that English, you need to strengthen the Spanish too. And to understand if the kid has a deficiency in learning, or if there is a deficiency in there, you need to test it in Spanish because it's the mother language of the student. And I also have learned that this is not like a one or the other, that there is students that may know certain level of Spanish and English, and you kind of need to do those tests, both of them. And in order to understand those bilingual students, you need to have a knowledge of those two languages and how that development in a bilingual situation works. So my question is, are we doing that?
No, we are not, except for in our immersion programs.
Okay. Are we going to do that?
Wonderful question that I think we could probably explore, especially as we look at our presentation moving forward with our two literacy specialists, with Laura. I can't say for sure that we are.
Okay.
It hasn't been a matter of conversation, especially as it directly relates to the READS Act and how that's coming out in statute.
Yeah, because in my opinion, we're doing a service to us if we're expecting the student to read a first grader student that has never spoken in English. We're expecting it to read English level when the student is very, very confused about what the language is that they're speaking in their class.
And overall, with our immersion programs, I think we are a step ahead of many other districts. But if you're talking across the board at every school for those students, yeah, right.
It just strikes me that, and this isn't about the policy, well, it is about the policy. It's kind of like when we decide what we want our growth to be for graduation rates, and then we have the discussion of, well, let's just put it at 100% because that's what we really want, right? So I understand that we want all kids to read at grade level starting in kindergarten, and yet just changing it from reading by third grade to changing the statute doesn't mean that it magically happens. No comment needed. I just wanted to put that out there.
Would say based on my experience that I would agree, but no comment. That there is a challenge there, and we want to rise to the challenge with as many of our students as we can. The statute does call for ensuring that we have reading interventions that are accelerating student growth. We've done that for years now, and we are seeing acceleration as we work with kids, especially when we talk about our kindergarten through third grade students. And you see that some of those areas or some of those other uses of intervention would include Wonders, Sunday, Lexia. We have Reading Core that's been going on. We have ADSES that works with students who are struggling, ensuring that we have alternative delivery models. So we do have a very robust system of interventions that happens through the MTSS process. And we'll continue on that. You heard Principal Jokela talk a little bit about that as one of her challenges every day, that she wants to ensure that kids are getting exactly what they need. Roman numeral 7 talks about having a local literacy plan. I spoke just briefly about that before. We do have that in place, and that will be looked at again during our presentation coming up in the next month. Staff training, you've heard a great deal over the last year about our letters training, and that we're making sure that all of our teachers who have to be responsible to be involved in the teaching of reading are having an opportunity to participate in letters. And that work is moving forward in a very positive way with great engagement by all those teachers. Like everything that we see out of MDE, they have allowed us a timeline that's can feel very, very quick as we're trying to get things done by July 2025. We do expect the possibility that there might be some extensions in there because as you look at some of our other school districts across the state, there's some struggles to try and make that deadline of July 1st, 2025 to have their teachers going through a science of reading training. We're on path to trying to make that happen. The last section, section 10, does talk about literacy incentives and aid uses. The money that we're getting from MDE related to ensuring that we have letters training going on. It also talks about other districts are utilizing some of the money that they have available for under the READS Act is for a literacy lead. I didn't touch on this this evening, although I did last time. We are fortunate that we have literacy leads within the district. For other school districts, they're having to contract together as multiple school districts, especially as you look at some of the smaller school districts in different parts of their state, that they're having to pool their money together to ensure that by statute they have a literacy lead within the school district. So that is the content of Board Policy 621 for a second reading.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Rivard has one more policy for us tonight. Reading, it is proposed revised Board Policy 514, bullying prohibition. I can't pronounce that word for the life of me, so.
Thank you, Chair Oz. So this is Board Policy 514. This was revised and looked at back in July of 2022. So we have it back again, not a year and a half later or so. It's based on just a language change that came out of last year's legislative session. As you would recall, that the purpose of this policy is to prevent bullying and to have a system set up so that we are taking actions to investigate and remediate when bullying does occur. The change that you see is in relationship to some of the definitions that they've brought in to be included under bullying. One is about sexual exploitation as being called out specifically as being part of a bullying policy. And the second is malicious and sadistic conduct was the next part. Strangely, you would have thought that this would have been naturally included in bullying. What we're seeing with the new statute and with policy is that they're calling it out and defining it specifically so that as we work with children or young adults who are making decisions to bully, that we would have some more clearer definitions. Those are the only two changes for that policy. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Scott?
One of the things I talked to at the MSBA was, do we have a policy regarding the retention of information?
We sure do, and I would probably turn to Tracy to ask which exact policy that is. In the 300s or 600s?
It's in our data section of the policies. I don't know the number offhand, but we do have a data retention policy.
Okay, are we following it?
The letter.
Because when Minneapolis supposedly had a policy and they got hacked and they were getting information back to the 1960s. So we got to not only have a policy, but follow the policy. Are we? Okay.
Yes, I'll say it in the microphone so the public can hear me. Yes.
Thank you, Scott.
Monica?
Well, you got here and said, oh, yes, we cannot believe that we didn't say this policy applies to sexual exploitation. So I'm going to say, okay, I don't know why it says that this policy applies to sexual exploitation. So how is defined sexual exploitation, and why is this policy applies to sexual exploitation? Sorry for asking the silly question, I guess.
Monica, could you rephrase or restate the question?
I don't know why is sexual exploitation in this policy?
Why is it being called out specifically?
Yeah.
I think from my perspective is that we've seen incidences of that happening in other districts or in other states, and that they're looking to ensure that we're including it in the policy, and that we're investigating if sexual exploitation were to occur, and that it's a matter of policy. It's not something that we cannot choose not to investigate and respond to.
I agree.
Okay.
That sexual exploitation should be.
So it is an additional part of the policy that didn't exist in there before.
Well, it sounds like sexual exploitation is not anywhere, but why isn't it in bullying? Why would it be in the bullying one? I mean, sexual exploitation sounds a lot more badly. Should have their own policy. I don't know.
An interesting question.
I don't know why it's in the bullying thing.
I think
If
Tracy
wants
is
to
going to
talk.
help us.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Some of those new legislative definitions were floating, frankly, in the legislation and didn't have a home in any of the current policies. So MSBA reviewed all of the policies and made recommendations through their model policies about which policies to include those new definitions in. So that's part of the MSBA recommendation to include it in that statute. Sexual exploitation, depending on the facts, might also be investigated and addressed under our Title IX policy, under our sexual harassment policy, but it certainly could be a form of bullying depending on the context of the case.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rivard.
You're welcome.
We have two more policies coming up. Second reading of proposed revised board policy 534, which is unpaid meal charges, presented by Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Operations.
Good evening. Minor changes to policy 534. As you recall, we went through both of these policies last time. In 534, the changes are just to align with the new practice of free meals at schools. And what this does, it defines which part of the meal is free. So it's the regular school meal, and then this addresses milk for students who bring cold lunches, students who want a second milk, students who want a second meal, and a la carte. And so there's just some clarity in the language and the purpose and in the payment piece. And then also in the unpaid meal charges, because meals are free, students will apply for, and families will apply for educational benefits, but it's really not for free and reduced lunch. And so that language was struck, but we still do encourage families to fill out the paperwork for the other benefits. Any questions?
All right, we'll move on to your other one. We have the second reading for proposed revised board policy 806, crisis management.
Yes, so this one we recently brought to the board, but there were some legislative changes, and what we've done is we've added those changes to this, and it's the language is pretty much right out of the statute. One change that we made. The statute refers to active shooter. The language we use in 742 is active threat. Actually, it's used throughout the whole community versus active shooter. And so we replaced all those references with our local language there. But basically, it defines what our requirements are around student mental health and well-being. That we're noticing families, that we are presenting to the board, which we did November 1st. It lays out that active threat drills are optionals for students, and that if we would use an active threat simulation, which we don't, students would need to opt in. All of our preparation are lessons and not the actual simulation. It also references that we include violence prevention within the curriculum, that students have an opportunity to contribute to the school safety plan, which we do. And also it includes the radiological emergency information, which is important to us due to our proximity to the Monticello nuclear plant. And basically what that is, it's just that we need to have a plan for students who live within a 10-mile radius of the power plant that attend our schools, what would happen if there was an incident, so that students aren't traveling back into a contaminated area. And those are the changes.
All right. Thank you. Okay, moving on to reports. First up is the attendance report.
Thank you, Chair Haas, members of the board. I have a fairly short report this evening. First, I want to lead with congratulating Natalie Ratha, who is our transportation supervisor. She won the humanitarian award at this year's Martin Luther King Jr. celebration that is put on by our community, and she won that for her work in the transportation department and deliberately increasing staff of color and in her emphasis on inclusion and belonging for our students and our staff and our families. So I want to congratulate Natalie, and thank you to Gary Ganji over there for his support of that team. And finally, I just want to share a highlight of my day and my month, although this might have come in just as having Jack here was perhaps also a highlight. But and I'll be a bit vulnerable for a moment. I was at South, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago, and the media specialist, Mr. Klein, said, "Hey, we have these PBIS drawings for students who can earn points for following their school-wide expectations, and they can put their points in to win different things. And would you consider being a prize?" And I said, "Mr. Klein, no middle school student wants to have lunch with the superintendent." He's like, no, I promise they do. And I was like, okay. And I said, but I'm going to feel really sad, honestly, when nobody picks me. Like, I will feel really sad. And lo and behold, some students entered, and it was really cool. They had, some of the students had up to 50 points. That was the most anybody had, but they could enter any number of points, and the more points they entered, the more chance they had to win. So some students put in only one, and some put in as many as 13. And so I get to go today and have a pizza lunch with 7 middle school students, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Principal Heitkamp joined us. And I asked them, I was explaining what I do, what you do, and I said, well, I get to talk to the board tonight. What would you like them to know? And they would like you to know that their names are Jeremy, Bentley, Ethan, Nosagian, Selma, Jasmine, and Kalia. And they would change nothing at all about South. They love sports, and they think it's lots of fun, and they adore their friends. And their advice is do your work, pay attention in class, and don't put things off for later, which I thought was quite impressive. And they also wanted me to show you our photo. So here is my lunch crew from today. So Selma, Jasmine, and Kalia, and the young men on the other side. So that was the highlight of my last few months.
Can I just add that my son, it's a good thing he wasn't there because he told me before I came that I need to tell everybody that we should not have chicken enchilada soup anymore.
Okay, then moving on to Board of Education Standing Committee reports. It's kind of been busy around here the last couple days, so seeing everybody in the hallways here going to their meetings. First, we have the Achievement, Integration, and Equity Committee, Chair Natalie Copeland.
Thank you, Chair Haas. So we met this morning, and we continued our discussion on what makes a well-rounded student. We talked about our district's strengths and opportunities as it pertains to continuing to build a portrait of a 742 graduate and how to help our community understand who we are as a district. It was actually a very robust, interesting conversation, and I had a struggle to put it into one sentence, but there it is. The activities update that we got for mid-year from Dr. Harris today during our committee was great. He gave us an update on activities participation in our district for the fall athletics and activities. He reports that we are holding steady from last year or growing in almost every instance. The one exception that they found is in girls soccer at Tech and Apollo, and we discussed how efforts are being made between district leadership and Central Minnesota Youth Soccer Association to grow the girls program from those younger ages so that when they get to middle and high school, it's already a part of their life. And our next meeting will be in February.
Thank you. Then we have Board Finance and Audit Committee, Chair Aldo.
We met, what day did we meet? Monday? Tuesday? Tuesday. Yeah, Monday we were shut down for Martin Luther King Day. Tuesday we met and we had a few items on the agenda. The first one was the 2024 meeting schedule. I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing, but we decided we will again meet on Friday afternoons at 1 o'clock. For most of our meetings, there was a couple of days where the calendar didn't allow for us to meet at that time on Friday, so we're moving those couple meetings, but they will all be noticed. They're open to the public, so if anyone wants to attend, come on in. Next item on the agenda was the additional funding from the McKinley addition. And there was 2 previous board approvals of funding for the McKinley addition. One was for $450,000 from the ALC fund balance for restrooms, and the other was for $3.4 million from ESSER and one-time general funds. After receiving the bids, the project is currently estimated to be about $300,000 over budget. This is primarily due to increased costs to meet the new storm shelter requirements, as well as an unexpected expense in investigating and partially removing an underground structure from an old water tower foundation that was discovered. The additional cost will also come one half from ESSER and one half from one-time general funds, and this will come to the board for approval on February 7th. That water tower was there, and it was built in the 1800s, and it was taken down in the 1930s. Yep, 1930s. So it's been a long time since it was there, but it was right underneath where the garden was. So there's a reason that that garden was there.
Let's make a big hole.
Then we talked about Apollo LTFM improvement bids. The bids for the project came in favorable, but we'll be rejecting the bids that we received for the tiling and terrazzo flooring in the work scope, and we'll be rebidding it with modifications to the scope of work in restrooms B and C wing. This change in scope will also bring the estimated cost of the gypsum board assemblies work scope over the $175,000 statutory requirement for the bids. So that will also be included in this rebid. The call for bids for this on the agenda is on the agenda for the January 17th meeting. That's it.
Thank you. And then we have the Personnel and Negotiations Committee Chair, Monica Segura Schwartz.
Thank you. So we had a meeting yesterday, and we had 2 items in the agenda. We discussed a proposal for an outside consultant to support the process of 2023-2024 superintendent evaluation, and we agreed to move forward. I'm going to tell you that this consultant said that this person has worked with many other districts, and that was very impressed with our process and how well organized we are with that process. Couldn't leave that out. So I'm pretty proud of that. The other thing that we discussed was the administration provided an update on the status of contract negotiations with remaining bargaining groups. And that's the end of my report.
All right, thank you. Then we have future agenda items. February board meeting work session topics will include the Literacy and Read Act, restorative practice and conscientious discipline update, schools update, and policy readings. At this time, does any board member wish to request a future agenda item? Okay. Then for our minutes, it is 8:56 p.m. We are moving into the school board is going to move into a closed session for the purpose of discussing negotiation strategy pursuant of Minnesota statute section 13D.05 subdivision 2-3. And once we finish our closed session, we will open the meeting back up and then immediately adjourn the meeting for the night. So thank you for watching and have a good night.